Welcome to another episode of Learn from People Who Lived It.
Well, hi there. It's Matthew Blades, leadership coach, speaker, and former broadcaster. And this is the show that's all about when life becomes the teacher. Every single day, we sit down with people who didn't just study it or talk about it. They've lived this stuff, and that's what makes them so valuable. And today, I am very excited to be bringing into our conversation Jill McMahon. She is the host of what we like to call around here, Guns and Grief. It's a show.
Welcome to another episode of Learn from People Who Lived It.
Every Thursday. I just thought people needed to hear that again, Jill. I was like, let me do that again. Let me make sure people got that,
They got it two times.
So Jill's a grief counselor, suicidologist. She is a gun violence survivor. And I titled this today a tragic event from the weekend. And I'm going to share with everybody up front that I don't expect today's episode to be like bubble gum and roses. I experienced something really difficult this past weekend, and I have been waiting all week to talk to Jill about it. And it's been hard for me, Jill, because I wanted to call you. I literally wanted to call you Sunday morning, the day after it happened. And I said, you know what? Hold on a second. This would be a really, really good thing to just talk about on today's show. So we're going to in a moment. But first, last week you were on and you were really challenging us to do a couple of things around all of the big world events that are taking place. And if I remember correctly, you challenged us all to just turn it off. I want to check in with you so that you can check in with us. Anything to follow up on from last week's messaging before we get into this story today?
I really still just have this pull to check on people, my friend, because I don't see that life's events are really easing up in the last week. I can tell you as far as, my kind of meter is concerned, I probably feel heavier today or have felt heavier in the last couple of days than I felt last week. So I think I really just want to have people hear you and I say, how are you? Really, truly, like just because maybe the noise is slowing down in Minneapolis, it doesn't mean that there haven't been other triggering, scary, frightening events that we are ingesting day in and day out. So I still want people to think just because the storm is past, it's not over. I want them to continue to just pause and really kind of clean up the residue. Because after something big occurs, something frightening, and for us, I'm going to say in America, I feel like it's been hit after hit after hit recently, right?
Yeah.
We feel like, oh, thank goodness it's past. Well, if we don't clean up the residue, right, that's occurred after the storm, it'll slowly start eating your energy and you'll become depleted and you won't understand why. And you'll think this doesn't make any sense. Nothing catastrophic is happening right now. Well, it's just because we didn't, clean it up a little better, take care of ourselves, rest, continue to pause, everyone. Pause your content. It's not time to come out of the cave quite yet.
Why do you think people allow the current events to impact them so much? You and I were having a conversation before we jumped on. And I said, look, I can hear about these events, but I don't let them into my life in a way that runs my life. This is just, it's something that's happening over here. It's something that's happening over here. I don't have much control over, ice in Minneapolis or what's going on with Savannah Guthrie's mom. Like I don't have control of that situation. So the best that I can do is hear about it, pray about it. But I want to sort of ask you that question because I'm hoping that others will hear it and say, yeah, how do I sort of filter the news so it doesn't have such a big impact on me?
I'm going to ask you to repeat to our audience what my answer was to you when you said, Jill, you're like, I don't really ingest it. Like, I don't really take it on as my problem. And I said, and that is because
I know how to regulate myself, or you said because I'm regulated,
Yes.
I've done the work on being
Yes.
regulated.
Yes. So that's the key, You
Hmm.
do this show and you do what you do because you've done the work. You can't provide the service that Learn from People Who Lived It provides if you haven't done the work yourself. That would be irresponsible, in my opinion. And so you've learned how to regulate. In other words, you've learned how to close your jar. And there are many of us that are still learning, that don't quite know how to do that yet. And I will say, I'm going to add, those individuals that are empaths, and I am an empath, and we can do a whole nother show or segment
You and me
on what an
both.
empath is, right? For us, at times, it's more challenging because compassion is, I see an event, I hear the details of a childhood drowning, I think that's horrible. My heart hurts for the family, but I also have to go pick my son up from softball practice, right?
Hmm.
An empath takes the same data, the same information, and feels it, physically feels it in their body. And it could shift their mood, right? And so it's particularly important for people that tend to be more empathetic. And that's just a characteristic. That's just, some people are, some people aren't. It's not right. It's not wrong. Nobody's
Sure.
doing anything wrong if they're an empath. But those people might need to work even harder on their emotional regulation. And you've just sharpened your tools. There's so many of us out there that could use another course of support and education on emotional regulation. Okay, buddy, I'm going to turn it over to you. I love that you asked the question. I love that we're checking in with our people, but I do know, because I listened to Dr. Dave's episode yesterday, which I'm
Yes.
gaining a lot from. But at the end of your episode with him, I was surprised to hear you say
Hmm.
that you've been holding on to something all week that you want to talk to me about, because you and I have no hesitation chatting with each other whenever we want. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you finding that restraint, but I really would like to hear from you as to what happened and what's going on in your world.
So probably, well, you don't need any context, but our audience might need a little context. And I'll provide that as I share this story. And I want to be really sensitive about this story because it's so fresh. And the people that are really living this day in and day out now, it's really fresh for them too. And so I may tweak a couple of details just to protect some privacy. And I hope everybody understands that.
Fair.
This past Saturday night, I was at a hockey game, as I usually am on a Saturday night because I run the Desert Vista High School hockey program. And it happened to be the D1 state championship game at Mullet Arena. It was a really big game between a couple of teams. And we bought tickets for all of our players so that they could come and experience the game. And when I walked into Mullet Arena, what I walked into was a unbelievably tragic scene. I walked in on one of our kids that is in our program. His father was having some sort of a cardiac event
Mm.
and was on the floor, and paramedics and fire were working on him profusely. They were trying to save this man's life. And because of my background, and this is the part where I need to give people some context, I have seen this movie before. This happened to my own father when I was 23 years old. He literally dropped to the ground, and he too had some sort of a cardiac event that ended up being what they call sudden cardiac death, which means that the first time you find out you have a heart attack is the day you die. And so I have been through this before, where I've seen my own father pass away in real time in my arms over an event like this. And so walking into Mullet and seeing this scene again was really challenging for me. And I don't want to get it twisted. Like, I stepped into the role that I know God put me there to be in. And that is, I walked in and I saw his son, who was right next to his dad, obviously, while they were watching all of this unfold. And in a moment, I knew that I had to be kind of the protector for this kid. And he was on the phone, with his mom, and he said, "Can you talk to her? I can't talk to her anymore." And so I took the phone from mom and I was kind of illustrating to her what I was seeing because she wasn't there at the venue. Long story short, this sweet, sweet man didn't make it. And
Oh,
he ended up passing away that night. And it's been messing with me all week and
mhm.
messing with me in a really interesting way. Yes, of course, it's kind of unearthed some of the stuff that I dealt with now almost 30 years ago. I mean, I was 23 years old. So yeah, in a couple of years, it'll be 30 years ago that I dealt with this scene. But I really do feel so much for this kid,
Yeah, yeah,
and his mom, and because I know what's getting ready to happen for them next. I know how this is going to show up for him in every little tiny way over the next 20 to 30 to 40
mhm.
years of his life. And I wanted to share that story with you, Jill, because I thought, as a grief counselor, somebody who's been in this space for a long time, and more importantly, been somebody who helps folks out when there is this sudden,
Absolutely.
absence
Sudden
of
catastrophic
life.
loss. Yep.
Yeah, it's a little different. It feels heavy. It feels, I don't know. It's put me in a pretty reflective mood this week,
Mm. Tell me
and
more about that.
tell me more about that.
The reflective mood. What does that mean, really? I mean, it's a beautiful term, but for those that are listening, they may not understand what that looks like for you.
Yeah, it's brought back a lot of old feelings that I had around my father's situation.
Okay.
Um, it's brought up. I think what it's brought up for me, Jill, is I'd kind of assumed that I'd done most of the work. I mean,
Mm.
this is almost 30 years ago. This is almost 30 years ago that this event has
Yeah,
taken place, and I really thought I'd kind of emptied out that can quite a bit. And what this week has shown me is that there's probably something still left in there. And I don't know if my job is to like sit with it and be with it and analyze it and overthink it, or if my role is just to say, you know, hey, look, you're doing the thing that you tell other people to do all the time. And we've said this before on our podcast a million times. I believe that the only reason we ever get dealt the terrible stuff is so that we can help somebody else when it's their turn. And God put me in that place to be there for that
agreed.
family, to do
Agreed.
just that thing. That's not a
You
mistake that
walked
I
in at
walked in.
exactly the time that you walked in for a reason. Agreed.
Right. And so, but it does make me wonder if there's still some of that residue you were talking about earlier, right? Is there still some of that sitting at the bottom that I either haven't examined, or maybe I'm overthinking it this week? And it's just as simple as, well, this event took place, and of course it looked like the other one. So of course there's going to be some things that show up, but try not to give it too much meaning. So those are the types of reflections that I've been having this week.
Here's my statement for you. Why can't both be true? Right? That's a rhetorical
Yeah.
question. You don't need to respond to that. But I think both can be true, Matthew. I mean, what I know about trauma, having done this for a hot minute, is that anytime a new traumatic event occurs, it pulls up all of our old traumas, regardless if you had done the work or not. So I actually love that you brought this example up because I think it's really important for other people to hear and understand that just because something horrific, frightening, catastrophic in your life, right, occurred 25 years ago or when you were 7 years old, it doesn't mean that you ever get over it, right? What you've done typically is worked hard to recover from it. Now, some have even gone a step further and they've done some real healing or some real digging around and real cleaning out around it. And I know that you're that guy, Matthew. I know that you're that guy that's done the work. However, you're also human.
Hmm.
And the brain and the mind is really, really tricky, buddy. So, you know, you've experienced a prior trauma in your life. You experience a new trauma, and it's amazing how quickly your body goes right back into that moment of being a 24-year-old son who's just a child. I mean, I can tell you
Kid.
that because I have kids in their 20s. They're still just kids. You are a kid who needed his dad, who wanted an intact family, and you watched that implode in front of you. So immediately, your brain can take you right back to a similar experience that it knows and give you all of the same physiological responses. Do you remember, like, from this weekend, like just feeling so electrified, like you were in it with this kid?
1,000%. I was feeling everything they were feeling.
And as challenging, I would say, as that was for you to revisit that feeling, none of us that have experienced trauma ever want to revisit that feeling again. I mean, don't sign me up. I have no interest in ever going back to knowing what it feels like to have my life in danger. However, because you had that experience in the past, you were able to show up and sit next to this young man because you're like, I'm on the other side. So what you also explained is this sadness, and I'm going to call it grief, of anticipating what this young man and his family are going to be experiencing, feeling, um, brand new firsts for the next 1 year to 25 years. That, my friend, is empathy. That's what we started this entire conversation about. And that's anticipatory grief. So you're feeling grief for him and them, knowing that Christmases are going to be weird. Father's Day is going to suck. College graduation is going to suck. I mean, let's just call it out for what it is.
For
So
sure.
I'm going to call
Absolutely.
your big feelings love. Matthew, I'm going to call your big feelings love. But you're still the 23-year-old boy who lost his dad. You can be in your body and still be him because he's right there in your gut, buddy. I mean, we all have our younger versions of ourselves just hanging out in our gut, and you were able to access him really quick.
So just so that I'm clear, because look, I don't want today's episode to be about me. I'm hoping that other people can find
Yeah.
themselves in my story.
Yeah.
The advice when you have kind of a repeated exchange like this is, I think you're saying, feel it. Then just feel
Yeah.
what you're feeling right now.
Feel it and allow yourself. So I will say, I hear from you, and I'm so glad you're verbalizing it because so many people will relate to your words. I hear from you a little bit of shame, or maybe not shame, but you're questioning yourself. Am I overthinking this? Stop. I need you to slow your mind down. And I just need you to stop and be in it. And just realize that even though it is 30 years later, I still know what it felt like to hurt the day that my dad died. Or for whomever is listening, the day that I had that traumatic experience. I can recall that in a minute. Are you kidding me? It's in my DNA. It's part of who I am. And in some ways, Matthew, it's part of what makes you and I who we are, because we've had those earlier in life experiences. But when you have a new trauma occur in your life, old traumas will come to the surface. That is human, right? And again,
Yeah.
those experiences are part of who's made you the man who's created this platform to bring light to other people's life experiences, right? So we honor those in some way. And if you feel like hell for this next week or this next 2 weeks, or every time you look that young man in the face and every time you see them walk into the hockey rink, that is love and that is empathy. because you know what is coming down the pipeline. Don't overthink that. That's all it is. That's called being human, my friend.
Yeah.
And
No,
it's
I
hard.
appreciate that. Yeah, thank you. As you're talking, I can just sort of feel my body saying, just let it in almost, right? On some levels,
Honor
I'm
it.
trying to keep it out. And what I need to do is just, let it in. And I can, as you're talking, I should be clear. I can feel myself getting really choked up and just needing to probably go and have a release, when
Mhm.
we're done taping this.
Yep.
Well, thank
I
you
agree.
very much
I
for
agree. I love
all the
you.
love that you give. Yeah, I love you back.
And
And
my
for
heart goes
any
out
of
to that young
us,
man and his family. I'm
uh,
so glad that you were the person to walk through the door, my friend. I really am very glad for them that you were there. It's a
well,
gift.
look, he had a lot of great support around him that night, and I was just one component, one little piece of it. But I'm glad I was there too. Somebody said that must have been hard, and I said I don't think I would have wished to be anywhere else. I wouldn't have wanted anybody else to be there. On some levels, I had to be there, right?
Agreed. Agreed.
Yeah. Well, look, I guess for anybody else who's kind of going through it right now too, and maybe you just had another compound fracture put on your life, what Jill's telling us to do is to let it in, to just honor it, observe it, and so we will. So I'll do that today if you guys do that today. How about that for a deal? Yeah. Okay. We're back tomorrow for our Friday episode, and on the show tomorrow we've got Scarlett, aka the Biz Hippie. This is what she calls herself. And the reason I'm so excited about our conversation tomorrow is because she's going to talk about our connection to money and how our relationship with money may be the thing that is keeping us from having the money. So,
Mm.
very interesting conversation and kind of an about face to where we were today. But thanks for being so wonderful as always, Jill. And thanks to everybody for watching. I've got Jill's book, which is called Bulletproof, up on the top left. If you are interested in picking up a copy of Bulletproof, you can hit that QR code right now and it'll take you to the book on Amazon, and you can learn a little something from Jill McMahon. To everybody who
Matthew,
watched, hit like and subscribe. And yes, Jill, final word, go.
before we go, your
Yeah.
vulnerability is beautiful. And thank you for sharing it. I know that wasn't easy. We all appreciate it. You help the rest of us be vulnerable, my friend.
Okay. We got to wrap up because I'm about to have a big cry. Thank
Love
you.
you.
All right. Thanks everybody for
Bye.
watching.